President Obama was the inaugural guest for the new Meet the Press host Chuck Todd, where the issue of confronting ISIS was front and center. Obama said he's ready to go on the offensive, but again stressed that does not include boots on the ground.
The next phase is now to start going on some offense. We have to get an Iraqi government in place, and I'm optimistic that next week we should be able to get that done. And I will then meet with congressional leaders on Tuesday. On Wednesday, I'll make a speech and describe what our game plans are going to be going forward. But this is not going to be an announcement about U.S. ground troops. This is not the equivalent of the Iraq War.
Well, despite that pledge, more than 1,100 troops are already on the ground in Iraq, and 148 airstrikes have been launched against ISIS militants. Even with this show of force, President Obama still contends ISIS is not a threat to the U.S. Former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morrell thinks differently. Listen.
We have not seen any immediate intelligence about threats to the homeland from ISIL.
There's no credible information on September 10th, 2001 that al-Qaeda was going to hit us. The threat from ISIS is exactly what Fran said it was. It is them directing an American citizen or a Canadian or a West European to come here and conduct a small-scale attack. That could happen tomorrow.
All righty. So, Bob, first ISIS was JV. This is President Obama's thought process. He's told us they're JV. Then he's going to degrade ISIS. Then he's going to make them a manageable problem. Then they're not JV. They're bloodthirsty animals that we're going to destroy. He's lost. He's circling the forest. He keeps seeing the same tree over and over again. What should we expect from Wednesday? Anything new?
Well, I think first of all, I think he has reassessed his evaluation, as I have, of the threat of ISIS. One, that is allowed to be done by a president. Secondly, I think that we've seen some very big news this weekend with the Arab League joining into this effort. I think he's going to announce on Wednesday a full-scale bombing of the Syrian targets for ISIS. And I suspect that the bombing in Iraq will continue and be built. What he was talking about next week is that Maliki will be gone, and there will be a new president, and there will be a status of forces agreement signed. And I think that what we're seeing here is that the world is gathered around here and is gathering around, and they are going to take it to ISIS, and ISIS, I believe, will be non-threatening in a matter of weeks.
Okay, KG, President Obama said they were JV. Now he says they're clearly not. Assess this. Here's his dilemma. If he wants to go big and really, really kind of tamp down ISIS and take care of this problem he's having, he needs to go into Syria. But if he does that, he's going to look like he's pro-war, pro-Iraq war, everything he campaigned against in 2008.
Should that matter?
You tell me.
I mean, should it matter, honestly? Don't we elect presidents to be great thinkers and to be forward-thinking, to make the tough choices, to do what's right in the best interest of national security and in this country? He shouldn't be worried about the optics, about the polling, or whether it's going to go back on a promise he made. That shouldn't matter when a job needs to be done. And unless he's willing to commit the military muscle to get this done, he's not going to be able to eradicate and destroy them. And if he does not do that, then he will have failed, and that will be his legacy instead.
President Obama said no boots on the ground. He literally looked into the camera, gazed into Chuck Todd's eyes and said, no boots on the ground. 1,100 boots on the ground, 1,100 military personnel there, on their way or there now. Who are they kidding?
Well, I think he will try to draw a very strong distinction, and he needs to be very definitive about what, and honest with the American people about what does it mean when you have 1,100 troops. He will draw the distinction that that is not an invasion of a country like 100,000 troops in the Iraq War of March 2003.
Say it just like that, then.
I could write that speech today. But there are several things that he's also said that he's not going to do in telegraphing. In fact, the White House over the weekend, when they previewed the speech, told Jonathan Karl of ABC News and maybe others, but I saw his reporting, that don't expect anything in there about Syrian airstrikes. I actually agree with former Senator Joe Lieberman, who wrote on Friday in the Wall Street Journal that President Obama does not need congressional approval in order to strike in Syria. I've actually held that position for the last 2 years when the red line was first crossed on chemical weapons. In addition, the United States policy is that we do not recognize Assad as the leader of Syria. So I think that actually is something, I don't know if he'll discuss that on Wednesday, but he might walk all the way up to it. My last point of what they are talking about, what they won't do, The White House is leaking that they're planning a 3-year plan, that this effort against ISIS will be a 3-year plan. Now, setting a date certain is exactly one of the reasons we're in this problem to begin with, because they knew when we were leaving, they would wait for a safe haven. I just think it's more important for the White House to talk about what is on the table, maybe also what they have been doing. I predict that they will probably declassify a couple of news nuggets to talk about things that the president has authorized in the last year or so that we did not know beforehand, because they're going to need some sort of news for this speech. Otherwise, it sounds extremely defensive when they said that don't expect this, don't expect that, and the president is going to defend himself in the speech. That's what their sole purpose of the speech. That's what they said over the weekend. I hope that's not true.
He's going to try again.
Josh Earnest kept using this term, buy-in. He wants Congress to buy in, which to me, Brian, sounds like with or without congressional approval, we're going to do what we're going to do.
Well, you're the money guy. You should know what it means by buy-in. He's going to say, I want $550 million for the operation, which shows you he's not studying Bush 41, who he says he idolizes on foreign policy, who got, he said, everybody else to pay for the war. We owed nothing after the Persian Gulf War in '93 because it was much more obvious to the world that you got to force him out of Kuwait. It's a tougher sell. Having said that, he says he is going to use boots on the ground, the Free Syrian Army. You know, the doctors, the lawyers, and the dentists? Those are the ones he said it's farcical to believe that they were going to actually be a force that we can arm. Now we're counting on them. And the Arab League, Bob, I hope they're in. But they screwed us when it came to Libya. Yep. Remember, they said, go into Libya. You got to help us. We got to get rid of Gaddafi. And then they just disappeared. So somehow we have to get leverage on Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar to write the checks, provide the bodies to go in there. And they got to be Sunni bodies.
You can't trust Qatar.
I understand that. But let's keep in mind that the threat here is much more significant as far as that concerned than Kuwait was. Excuse me, what Libya was. The other thing is the complexity of the Syrian issue is you're actually going into a civil war. In other words, you're trying to break up the ISIS part of the Free Syrian Army and then let them move forward. And that's a very complicated thing.
Why is that complicated? Hold on.
Because let
me ask my question. Right. So we know the territory that ISIS holds within Syria and within Iraq. I mean, it's pretty fairly well defined. In fact, you can see ISIS headquarters from Turkey.
Right.
You can see it. So you have an idea where they are. But the issue is you're flying over sovereign airspace, and for some reason, as Dana points out, look, Assad was a bad guy. Obama drew the red line at chemical weapons. They found chemical weapons allegedly, so they were going to go against his own people, and then they weren't going to go. Who are we? Are we worried about offending Assad?
No, he's got air defense. No, he's got to let him know. We got to blow it up first.
Brian, you're going to tell me right now that we couldn't escalate these attacks into Syria without losing any of our people?
No, I hope not. I just say we got to take it out like we did in Libya. We had to take it out first, and then we started the air cover.
They've got very sophisticated ground-to-air missiles. So I mean,
Russians gave it to them.
Yeah, the Russians gave it to them, and I think the answer is Obama needs money for sure from Congress to do this, but the War Powers Act is very clear. Yep. The President of the United States can make this move
absolutely, and I said that
too. But you know what actually makes this
difficult?
But what makes this more politically difficult for the president, and also from a communication standpoint, is the fact that he did not utilize that authority when Assad crossed the red line. He said, I am going to ask Congress. Mm-hmm. And that was then his excuse for not acting.
But that's a delay game.
He could do it. And I would still support, if he decided to do it on his own, I would support it. I'm just saying he put himself in a little bit of a pickle.
Let me get to this, guys. In addition to lacking a cogent strategy to defeat ISIS terror threat, the president also seems to be suffering from a little bit of amnesia about his proclamations regarding the group. Listen to his answer when Chuck Todd confronts him for calling ISIS JV.
Long way from when you described them as a JV team. Was that bad intelligence or your misjudgment?
Keep in mind, I wasn't specifically referring to ISIL. I've said that regionally, there were a whole series of organizations that were focused primarily locally, weren't focused on the homeland, because I think a lot of us, when we think about terrorism, the model is Osama bin Laden and 9/11. And the point that I was...
You don't believe these people...
Not yet, but they can evolve. And I was very specific at that time.
Boy, Dana, take this because my head's going to explode. Really, you weren't talking about ISIS then when you called him? Really? Honestly?
Look, so don't take it from me. The fact checker, Glenn Kessler at the Washington Post, looked into this because the White House has been saying that's not what the president meant. Four Pinocchios.
Yeah.
Saying that, yes, he did. He clearly did. PolitiFact said the same thing. Pete Wehner of Commentary Magazine has been following this very closely, and he's just shown it's just in black and white. Yes, that is exactly what he was referring to. Maybe he didn't mean to. Maybe it was a bad choice of words. I think that the White House, instead of digging their hole even deeper, that they should have just said, bad choice of words, moving on.
Instead, they just make it worse. If there ever was a time where you say, I made a mistake.
Just do it. It would be easy.
And I underestimated this, and so did some people in the intelligence community. Others didn't. But we now have to reevaluate, and we have to say that this certainly is not a JV team, and we have to bring our varsity on board to take them on.
Right. Here's the question that was asked by David Remnick, who wrote a flowery biography on him. He says, even in the period that we've been on vacation, President Obama, in the last couple of weeks in Iraq, in Syria, and of course in Africa, al-Qaeda is resurgent. Yes, David, but I think the analogy we use around here sometimes, and I think is accurate, is if a JV team puts on a Laker uniform, that doesn't make him Kobe Bryant. So he's talking about the spread in the exact same region, so he's nailed.
There's no way around it.
And don't forget the Catherine Herridge report of about 10 days ago, where she broke the story with a source that revealed what was in the president's daily brief going back to January, that ISIS was a growing threat. You have testimony on Capitol Hill, in open testimony, this wasn't in closed session, from Brett McGurk, more information about ISIS as a growing threat. And you have people, so all of a sudden you start to realize the president says what we say around here is that they're JV. And now trying to convince himself and the American people that wasn't what he meant, it's absolutely disturbing.
Well, you lose
However, it
credibility.
does also tell us something, that the White House knows they're in big trouble. Remember, for this comment, they don't have to be. They could get out of it very quickly. But remember Benghazi, about 2 years ago this Thursday. President Obama doesn't call it a terrorist attack, but then convinces Candy Crowley in the debate to help him out of that question with Romney.
No active
and
terror
then when they blamed the video, and everyone said you blamed the video, they said no, we didn't. And then they tried to do that. When the emails come out and show, yes, they were blaming the video, Jay Carney, the press secretary at the time, said no, we weren't. It's actually very disturbing.
It's almost like they think we don't have video and we can't look back a year or 2 years ago.
We're not paying attention.
We're not paying attention.
And by the way, great special by Brett Baer. I watched it. It was outstanding Friday.
So can I,
on Benghazi,
Just one point about these things. If there's ever any place in the world where things evolve and change quickly, it's in the Middle East. And I will say this. I don't think anybody really had a notion that there would be a split as clearly as there was between people who were taking on Assad and ISIS. And this is something that Obama was given intelligence on. He made the mistake of suggesting that the most powerful group within this group was now forming themselves into a military operation, and he never should have done that.
So say that.
Well, okay.
What would be wrong?
That's why you should be working for the White House.
That's what I said.
Today.
No.
Just today. He's on point.
No, you said there's no way they could have anticipated this. And I said, well, then tell the American public we didn't anticipate it.
But I don't think
we weren't there.
We weren't.
And our views have changed about it. Not that we never said that.
But I would like to see a little more digging from the media to the administration, and not just at the White House, but at the intelligence community, at the Pentagon, asking that why are we in a crisis mode now? If
we knew this,
is our investment in our intel community so poor? Are we not spending our money well enough to have the intelligence that we need? Because that was the whole point of revamping intelligence after 9/11.
One thing to add, which you brought up, the status of force agreement, done. The change in Iraqi regime, done. When the president wants to get something done, he got it done. Can you imagine if he had that focus in 2011? I want the status of force agreement that leaves 10,000 there. I need that now or you're done. That's what he would have done. Maliki's out. We have an agreement.
I got to go, you guys.